Black 2 and White 2 are some of the funnest Pokemon games to Nuzlocke, so I thought I'd make a tier list for most of the in-game encounters so that fellow Nuzlockers know what to expect from their encounters. Let's get this show on the road. Also, please subscribe, I'm trying to hit 100 subscribers. I based all of my research off of the challenge mode version of these games, so keep that in mind. And of course, we're going to start off with the starters. I'm just going to tell you which one is the most optimal for a Nuzlocke. Most people would probably assume Emboar is the best because of his 2 typings allowing him to hit a lot of types super effectively, but in my opinion, Samurott is the best. He does good against Clay, and since it can learn Bug and Ice moves, it's good against Caitlyn and Grimsley. So that's 3 important trainers that Samurott is good against. Meanwhile, Emboar is only good against Berg and Grimsley, and Superior is only good against Clay and Marlin. Do not pick Superior, by the way. There are multiple grass types in the game that offer more type coverage than just grass. We'll get to them soon enough though. They might not be as fast, but they'll still give you more bang for your buck. Going back to Emboar, there's also a lot of important trainers that Emboar does not stack up well against. Skyla, Marlin, Clay, the list goes on. With that logic, you could argue that Emboar is the worst starter to pick. Superior only struggles against Berg, Roxy, and Skyla, but I just got done beating White 2 with Emboar as my starter. And I gotta say, he still had moments to shine in the playthrough. I'm putting Samurott in A, Emboar my GOAT in B, and Superior in D. Seriously, do not pick Superior unless you want to spam Leaf Blade and Leech Seed the whole time. Watch Hog. Now I know you guys want me to put it in F because it's so annoying, right? Team Plasma's always using this, spamming Super Fang, Confuse Ray, Hypnosis. It's such a pain, right? But that's exactly why I can't put it in F. We've all gotten unlucky and lost a Pokemon to an enemy NPC Watchog at least once. That's proof that it can be at least a little bit useful in the latter portions of the game. It's surprisingly too good to go in F. It fits just fine in D tier though. Now am I gonna act crazy and put it in B? Hell no, I'd rather kill myself. Liepard. As much as I want to put this in F, I can't. It can actually learn some useful move Twitter moves in the mid game, some of which are surprising. Iron Tail may be a given, but it can learn Gunk Shot and Seed Bomb too for some reason. With these moves, it can do super effective damage against 6 different types, which is 1/3 of the types in game. You'll definitely get some use out of it. It's also very fast, but its attack stat is not that high. It doesn't even crack a 90. But remember, this thing is frail, like really frail. Do not send this out against any heavy hitters like Excadrill or Absol. Also, this thing goes stupid in the Elite Four. But overall, D tier. Next is Unpheasant. Oh, Unpheasant. You get all this hate when you don't even deserve it. Well, you definitely deserve some of it. What kind of physical attacker gets all those special attacks through level up? Well, at least it gets Stab Return, which goes crazy as long as it isn't resisted. Be prepared to hear the word Stab Return quite a lot in this video. But for those of you who don't know, the higher your Pokemon's friendship stat, the stronger the move Return will be, which you can max out by just running around in game for hours on end. At max friendship, Return's base power is 102. With Stab, it goes up to a whopping 153. Hell, you could take it even further. If you give that same Pokemon a Silk Scarf, an item that boosts normal type moves, the base power will go all the way up to 183. And you can just spam that shit as much as you want. You're still stuck with Gust and Air Cutter being your only flying type moves until the 4th gym when you gain access to fly. As for coverage moves, it has access to U-Turn, and that's it. It does get some very useful status moves via level up like Roost and Feather Dance. That's about it though. I'm putting it in C. It'll get the job done. Okay, next we have an actually great Pokemon, which is Leavanny. It's somewhat fast, decent attack stat, great level up moveset, which includes Swords Dance for some reason. Can learn Shadow Claw to help you deal with Chantel's pesky ghost types. Great for Clay, Marlin, Caitlyn, Grimsley. This is an easy A tier. One could even say S tier. Superior wishes it was this good. Leavanny might not get Leech Seed, but let's be honest, it doesn't even need it. I'm a big Leavanny fan and you guys need to stop sleeping on homie. Also watch out for Flag and Fire moves. Okay, now this is a bad Pokemon. You're stuck with Sunkern until the 4th gym, and Sunflora literally gets nothing but grass moves. Well, it does get Earth Power after you beat Skyla, but the game is already half over at that point. It's very slow and has a low defense. Its only saving graces are its decent special attack and special bulk. This is going to be our first F tier. You might as well restart the run if you get this as your encounter because it's only like on the 2nd route of the game. It'd only take like 5 minutes to progress back to that point. Now we got my boy Stoutland, who is an easy S tier. If you get your hands on one of these with the ability Intimidate, then hoo boy, you are set. It has an okay speed stat, great bulk, and a great attack stat too. And its move pool is goated. Dig, Crunch, Iron Head, and all 3 of the elemental fangs. Those being Fire Fang, Thunder Fang, and Ice Fang. but you might not even need the Fang moves because stat return goes crazy with this thing. Now, all jokes aside, the elemental Fangs are so weak that stat return does a little bit more damage than a super effective elemental Fang move. Unless you're fighting like a rock or steel type, of course. I can only really recommend Fire and Ice Fang though, because there's gonna be a moment here and there where they actually prove useful. Stoutland also gets reversal, but that move is too gimmicky to be useful. Overall, Stoutland is a fantastic Pokemon, and you should be very happy if you get one in a Nuzlocke, especially if it has Intimidate. S tier for the good boy. Now we got one of the Johto goats next, Ampharos. Now for the first half of the game, Mareep and Flaffy are mid, but after the 4th gym it actually gets good electric moves like Thunder Punch and Volt Switch. It gets Signal Beam as a move tutor move, and it gets Power Gym at level 35. At some point, Ampharos becomes an easy B tier. It's a very slow Pokemon, but it has good enough bulk, decent coverage, and a great special attack stat. Oh yeah, and it gets Thunder Wave very early in the game, which is amazing. Our first Kanto Pokemon is Golduck. Now some of y'all might think I'm crazy for this, but I'm actually putting Golduck in S tier. When you look at Golduck's stats, it's actually very decent for a Pokemon playthrough. Not to mention this guy's move pool is stacked. It obviously gets water moves, of course, but it also gets a bunch of psychic moves through level up for some reason. It gets Ice Punch and Icy Wind, Signal Beam, and Zen Headbutt thanks to the move tutors. And it gets a bunch of TMs too, like Dig, Brick Break, and Shadow Claw. It doesn't get most of these moves until around the 4th to 5th gym, but you'll be fine until then. It's a pure water type for crying out loud, just don't be bad at the game. We got back-to-back water types here with Azumarill, and this water type is also S tier, but only if you get one with the ability Huge Power. If you get a Azurill as an encounter and it has Thick Fat instead of Huge Power, I just go find an Azurill with a Huge Power and catch that one instead. I wouldn't blame you. Thick Fat Azumarill is basically useless. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, Huge Power straight up doubles Azumarill's attack stat with no drawbacks. Give it the same attack stat as freaking Groudon. I'm not even capping. And what's even better is that it gets Aqua Tail before the 3rd gym, which is all it really needs. And what's even better is that Azu actually has a decent move pool to boot. Dig, Brick Break, Ice Punch, Bounce, this thing is set for life. I'd deadass jump for joy if I got an Azumarill as my Floggacy Ranch encounter. Next we have the Aura Guardian, that being Lucario. I really wish I could put him in A, but Lucario is also an easy A. There ain't no way in hell you're getting a Riolu as an encounter though. It's only available in one location and it has a 5% encounter rate. But if you do get Riolu as an encounter somehow, you'll have an amazing encounter on your hands. The only requirement for evolving it into Lucario is leveling up with high friendship during the day. So if you really wanted to, you could have a Lucario for the 1st gym. It's fast and hits hard both physically and specially, and has an astounding move pool as well. Iron Tail, Brick Break, Counter, Dig, Rock Slide, Ice Punch, the list goes on. It's the best encounter you will never get. Here we have Dunsparce. This is going to be our 2nd F tier. And he's our 2nd F tier because Dunsparce is a very bad Pokemon. It only has one base stat over 70, and is as slow as a drop of molasses sliding down a spoon. It learns a bunch of really good TMs, but half of those are either late game or post game. I'll admit it does get some very goated status moves via level up like Yawn and Screech. The only important gym leader Dunsparce will be useful against is Berg because it gets rollout at like level 15. The best thing that Dunsparce can do is put your opponent to sleep with Yawn and then cut their defense in half with Screech. That's about it. L encounter. And Audino is in a very similar boat. It has great bulk, very low speed, and non-existent attacking stats. Sis is doing Igglybuff damage. Just like Dunsparce, it learns a bunch of really good TMs and move tutor moves, but half of those are either late game or post game. The best she can do is spam Thunder Wave and set up screens. It only shows up in a shaking grass, so you can at least guarantee that you never get one. Audino actually has an alright design in my opinion, and I wish it was better battle-wise. So yeah, F tier. Next up is Simisage. But I'm just going to talk about all 3 of the Simis at the same time because they're basically just copy and paste of each other. I actually just used Simipour for the first half of my White 2 run, so I can confidently say that Simipour is a B tier mon. It's very fast and has a surprisingly good move pool. Before I left it in the PC forever, I think my Simipour had the moves Scald, Acrobatics, Ice Punch, and Bite. It also gets Dig, Brick Break, Rock Slide, and Shadow Claw. If this is somehow the only water type you get before Undella Town, you should be just fine until then. The other 2 monkeys have the exact same stats and almost the exact same move pool, so they can go into B tier too. Just remember this trio has low defensive stats, so watch out for heavy hitters. Scolipede. I've actually used Scolipede and I can confidently say this is an easy B tier. It has a decent level up moveset, decent attack, very high speed, but its special defense is a bit on the lower side. Stay away from air cutters and psychics. Its TM moves aren't that bad either. having access to rock moves, ground moves, and Iron Tail. After you beat Skylar, you could teach Shaco Tail for some nice water coverage if you really wanted to. Definitely a helpful member to have, especially when it comes to fighting Team Plasma Grunts. Another Kanto guy, Weezing. I really wanted to put this in F tier, but I'm not going to. But that's solely because it gets some useful moves after you beat Skylar. Those being Thunder, Fire Blast, and Dark Pulse, which is when the journey is already halfway completed. Until that point, it gets nothing but a bunch of poison moves. I genuinely feel bad for you if you get this as an encounter, but at least it'll be useful for Berg since poison types resist bug moves for some reason. Also, it'll be a big help for Marlin because like I said earlier, it gets Thunder. You would think it would be useful for Chantal too because her ghost types are weak to Weezing's Dark Pulse, but most of her Pokemon outspeed it and know Psychic because of course they do. B tier, but barely. Next is Magneton / Magnezone. This generation introduced the Eeveelutions, so I know people are just going to give Magneton the Eeveelutions and call it a day, instead of just fully evolving it into Magnezone. Both options are fine, they both hit super hard anyway. In my opinion, just stick with Eeveelutions Magneton. It's faster and probably bulkier too. I don't care enough to figure that out. But anyway, this is the only special attacking steel type in the franchise that get to move Mirror Shot at a useful early level. Eat your heart out, Klefki fans. You're stuck with Thunder Shock being your only special attacking move until you beat Elisa and get Volt Switch. And even then, Volt Switch forces you to swap out, which is annoying. It's not until after you beat the 6th gym that you have access to decent electric moves, those being Charge Beam and Thunder. But besides that, this is an easy A tier. It resists over half the types in the game, gets Thunder Wave before the 2nd gym, can set up screens, and use Signal Beam for some nice coverage. It's good against Roxy, Berg, Skyla, Marlin, Grimsley. He's just good at life. A tier. Now Arcanine is kinda complicated. He does get good fire type moves via level up and does have great stats, but how good your Arcanine is depends on what level you evolve it from a Growlithe, because there are some great moves that he can only learn by leveling up as a Growlithe, those being Flare Blitz and Crunch. Flare Blitz can only be learned at level 45, which is crazy. Do not wait until level 45 to evolve your Growlithe, that's ridiculous. He still learns Flamethrower at level 34, which is fine. Arcanine's special attack stat is base 100 anyways, which is good. Unless you just really need the extra power Arcanine has in sheer stats, I suggest waiting until level 39 to evolve it so it can learn Crunch. Crunch will help you for all the Ghost and Psychic types in the Elite Four. It gets Thunder Fang for some nice electric coverage, and it also gets Dig and Iron Tail too. He's good for fighting Berg, Skyla, Chantal, and Caitlyn. He will do a great job on your Nuzlocke team. Some people might say he's A tier, but I'm putting him in B. Next up is Magmortar, but I highly recommend just keeping it as a Magmar and giving it the Eviolite if possible. Eviolite Magmar is faster, bulkier, and has decent enough attacking stats. Now you're stuck with Magby, a bad Pokemon, until the 4th gym, which I know is super annoying, but if you give that homie time to evolve, he'll be a great addition to the team. It surprisingly has a great level up moveset when it comes to fire type moves, so you don't have to worry about the TM Flamethrower, which is unobtainable until after you've beaten all 8 gym leaders. After the 4th gym, you can teach it Brick Break, and after Clay, you can teach it Thunder Punch, and after Skyla, you could teach it Iron Tail and Psychic, but all that takes a long time to happen, so yeah. It's also very hard for fire types to shine in this game with none of the important trainers having types weak to fire, except for Berg. Only really helping out when you fight Skyla, Grimsley, and Marshall thanks to its decent move pool. B tier works just fine. Now we got my boy Electivire, and as much as I love him, he will be our 2nd C tier. You're stuck with Elekid, a bad Pokemon, for the first half of the game, and when it evolves at the 4th gym, it still has low health and low defense. When you get to Driftvale City, you'll have access to tons of moves, yes, like Signal Beam and the Elemental Punches, but Electabuzz's attack stat is only 83, and he doesn't fully evolve until after you beat the last gym leader. So you're stuck with Shockwave and Signal Beam being your best damaging moves for a good while. But once you finally get Electivire, you'll be smooth sailing. And both Electivire and Electabuzz can learn the Psychic TM you get after the 6th gym, surprisingly. Also, bro goes stupid in the Elite Four. He has Signal Beam for Caitlyn and Grimsley, and has Psychic for Marshall. And thankfully, he learns Discharge right before you fight Skyla, so it'll be a big help for fighting her and Marlin. I honestly just recommend keeping Elekid in the PC until it's time to fight the 6th gym leader. I know I said Magby was useless for half of the game and put it in B tier, but when Magby evolves, it instantly becomes very useful. Meanwhile, when Elekid finally evolves, it just becomes mid. So to reiterate, the Electivire line is very good late game, mid in the mid game, and complete trash in the early game. I love you, buddy, but you kinda got hold thanks to not fully evolving until so late in the game. Let's talk about Raticate. He's an easy F. His only good stat is his speed stat, and bro really falls off hard in the late game. I know it can have the ability Guts and the move Swords Dance, but that does not save this Pokemon at all. One interesting thing I will mention is that with the moves Dig, Crunch, and Iron Tail, it can hit almost half the types in the game for super effective damage. So that's cool I guess. Also, Sucker Punch could be a very useful priority move in certain situations, which is a move that it learns. He's still ass though. Flying his way onto the next spot of the tier list is one of my Johto goats, Crobat. He won't get a single poison type move until after you beat Clay, but you should be fine. Poison is only super effective against grass. Meanwhile, flying is super effective against grass, and more. Wing Attack and Acrobatics should do you just fine for stat moves. The only good coverage moves it gets are X-Scissor and Zen Headbutt, which aren't that useful on a Crobat. I mean, they're useful, but just not that useful. It also can learn Screech, which is a very underrated status move. Crobat will be useful for fighting Berg, Grimsley, and Marshall. And yes, you can actually evolve Zubat all the way up into Crobat before fighting the third gym, if you max out his friendship. It doesn't offer a whole lot, but it's definitely better than Unfezant. Most people would say A tier, but I'm putting it in B. It's basically a faster Unfezant with actual coverage and a psychic weakness. Okay, Muck, one of the most underrated Kanto Pokemon. I beaten this game with a Muck on my team years ago, and from what I remember, he did a great job. At least after it evolved from a Grimer anyway. It'll be a big help for fighting against the third gym leader, but after that, I suggest leaving him in the PC until it's time to fight Skyla. By then, Grimer will have evolved into a Muck, have actually good stats, and a bunch of good moves. Dig, Rock Slide, Screech, Gunk Shot, the Elemental Punches, etc. It's literally good against every important trainer after Clay, except Caitlyn, obviously, because she's rocking all those Psychic types. His speed stat is very low, but he has great bulk, so it should be fine. And there's still this big time period where Grimer is damn near useless between the 3rd and 6th gym. So I'll only put it in A. But when he's good, he's damn good. Oh god, and now I have to shit on Swoobat. I actually love this guy in terms of design, but in terms of Nuzlocke viability, it's going in F. It has only one good stat, which is speed. This Pokemon is helpful against Berg and maybe Marlin because it can learn Energy Ball thanks to the TM. It's overall a waste of time. Sorry sweetie, but you're less than mid. Gigalith. I used him recently and he was actually doing a great job. Unfortunately, its only good level up moves are rock moves, but after the 5th gym, it does get Bulldoze and Iron Head, which are very useful. You can fully evolve your Roggenrola before Berg in the challenge mode, and just plow through his whole fight. It's very helpful against Skylar too, and that's about where his highlights end. It's slow but has a high attacking stat and decent bulk. It holds its own quite well and is very helpful for plowing through route trainers. B tier works. Steelix. Now you can actually fully evolve Onyx into Steelix before the 3rd gym too if you manage to take a Metal Coat from a Wild Magnemite at Burbank Complex. You could just spam Smackdown and win the whole battle in like 8 turns. It's very helpful for Elisa too because all her Pokemon are weak to rock or ground moves, both of which Steelix can have at that point. In fact, Steelix is helpful for Skyla, Drayden, Caitlyn, and Chantal's fights thanks to Rock Slide, Ice Fang, and Crunch. He can also learn Iron Head and Dig. The problem is that Steelix is very slow and has mediocre special bulk and mediocre attack. You'll have to put lots of EVs in his physical attack for him to do good physical damage, but yes, he can be a fantastic addition to the team. God, I want to put him in B tier so bad, but he's just way too useful for way too many fights, so he's going in A. Can't believe he made it 2 tiers higher than Electivire. Next we have Daddy. Sorry, I mean Conkeldurr, yes. Now Conkeldurr does have low speed and low special defense, but every other useful stat is great. Hell, even his attack stat is base 140, which is insane. Against the elemental punches, Dig, Payback, Rock Slide, Bulk Up, and a bunch of other fighting type moves. Keldurr is helpful for Elisa, Clay, Drayden, Marlin, Grimsley, and Shaltal. And Timber can fully evolve right before Elisa, which is crazy. It's an easy S tier. Excadrill is up next, and I'm gonna be honest, this is another S tier. In challenge mode, you can fully evolve Jolbur right before Elisa and plow through most of her team with just Excadrill. It's also helpful against Skyla on almost the entire Elite Four. With a move pool like this, he's bound to be useful against a bunch of Team Plasma Grunts and route trainers too. Its defenses may be low, but it also has a high HP stat that somewhat compensates them, and its 135 base attack is nothing to scoff at either. Man, I'd hate to go after the performances that Excadrill and Conkeldurr made. Oh look, it's Delcatty. Yeah, this is an instant F tier. Not a single stat over 70, and its only good coverage moves are Dig and Iron Tail. Don't know what they were trying to cook with this one. Everybody's favorite wabbit to look up on Google Images right here. In all seriousness, Lopunny isn't a bad Pokemon. It's just not a great one either. In Black 2 only, you could find Baneri in Castelia City and evolve it right before Berg. And like I was saying way earlier in the video, stab return goes crazy. Well, usually it does. But Lopunny's attack stat is base 76. Yikes. But that's like its only problem though. It has high speed, decent bulk, and a whole lot of coverage moves. Jump kick, bounce, the elemental punches, etc. After beating Elisa, Lopunny will have super effective Ice Punch for Clay, Skyla, Drayden, and Thunder Punch for Marlin. Even in the Elite Four, it has Jump Kick for Grimsley. In the Battle Subway, you can buy EV boosting items for just 1 battle point each. So I'd buy like 10 proteins and use them on Lopunny to help fix its mid-attack stat problem. This Pokemon takes time and patience, but if you use it right and give it the attack EVs, it'll be a solid addition. I'm putting it in B tier. Now Whimsicott unfortunately is not one of the best grass types in the game. You're stuck with Giga Drain being your only attacking move until after you beat the 6th gym, which is when it gains access to the TM's Psychic and Shadow Ball. I realize I keep bringing up the terms Skyla and 6th gym leader. I'm sorry about that, but there's just too many good moves locked behind her fight. Iron Tail, Aqua Tail, Earth Powers, Zen Headbutt, etc. And also a lot of Pokemon can learn electric, ice, and rock moves, so it's only natural that a lot of Pokemon are good against fighting her team. But back to Whimsicott, its main problem is its attacking stats, which are a disappointing base 77. It doesn't even crack 80, good lord. You'd have to do what I was just saying for Lopunny and shove a bunch of EVs down his throat so we can do actual damage in the late game. And his HP is only base 60. It is very fast though, gets Hurricane right before the Drayden fight, and is good against Clay, Marlin, and most of the Elite Four. I'll put it in C tier. It's fast and has a decent move pool, but has mediocre special attack and low HP. Yeah, that sounds like C tier to me. Can't say the same for Lilligant though. She's going in the D tier for the sole fact that she gets no good coverage moves at all. I wish I was lying, but I'm being dead ass right now. It's literally just superior, but with better stat distribution in my opinion. It can learn the best stat boosting move in the game, Quiver Dance, but that does not save it in the slightest. In this generation, you do not want a Pokemon that can only hit 3 types super effectively. There's much better options out there. So yeah, Superior 2 Electric Boogaloo is going in the D tier. Have fun spamming Giga Drain. Clefable is up next in the Dex, even though you can't have one until right after you beat the last gym leader. Don't know why that is. It's a very late game encounter, but its stats are great and its move pool is even greater. Flamethrower, Signal Beam, Psychic, Ice Beam, the list goes on. And both of its abilities are great too. After you catch it, it's a big help against every important trainer except Marshall for obvious reasons. It's going in the S tier. Now let's talk about... oh shit, it's time to talk about all the Eeveelutions. Okay, let's get this over with. You can evolve Eevee into Vaporeon, Flareon, or Jolteon as soon as you get into Nimbasa City. I'll start with Vaporeon. Don't worry, I already made the Vaporeon copy pasta joke in a different video. I'm not doing that again. Want to know something funny though? You can't teach your Vaporeon a water type attack until after you beat Clay. You know, the ground type gym. Don't know how the playtesters never noticed that. After Clay, you'll have access to Surf, Signal Beam, and Aurora Beam. And after the 6th gym, you gain access to Shadow Ball. Then it becomes the 3rd best water type encounter in the game in my opinion. It has great bulk and a fantastic 110 base special attack. Aurora Beam is great for Drayden and Skyla. Shadow Ball is great for Chantal and Caitlyn. And Signal Beam is great for Grimsley. The only problem Porygon has is its speed stat, but that doesn't even matter when every other stat it has is great. It's still pretty useless between the 3rd to 5th gym due to lack of special attacks though. If it wasn't for that, I'd put it in S tier. So I'm just gonna put it in A. Bulky Waters are love, bulky waters are life. The fast one is up next, and just like Ampharos, it doesn't get a good electric move until after you beat Elisa. And I mean right after, because she gives you the TM I'm talking about. Volt Switch. Luckily it gets Discharge at level 37, which is right before Skyla. And after you beat her, you get Shadow Ball. In fact, all the Eeveelutions get Shadow Ball. Remember that because I'm not going to repeat that for every one. Right before Clay, you can teach it Signal Beam too. Jolty is also helpful for fighting Marlin and every Elite Four member except Marshall. He's very fast and hits hard, but has low defense and HP. Don't expect him to live any ground type moves. I know I'll get cooked if I put this in B, so I'll put it in A. Now, Flareon is trash and is going into D tier. It's what you think I'd say, but I've beaten these games with Flareon on my team before, and he was alright. It gets Fire Fang right before Berg, thank God, and he just destroys that gym. You can actually get the Charcoal item in the same city as the 3rd gym, so that makes Fire Fang go from a 65 base power to a 78 base power, almost the same base power as Crunch and Dragon Claw, which is great because this guy doesn't get Fire Punch or Flare Blitz. So Fire Fang is your bread and butter for the whole game. As for coverage moves, it has Dig, Iron Tail, and I guess Superpower, but that move lowers the user's attack and defense by one stage, so I wouldn't use Superpower unless you really needed a fighting type move. Flareon is useful for Berg, Elisa, and I guess Grimsley thanks to Superpower. It has low speed, HP, and defense. It could easily be outsped in one shot by almost any rock or ground move, but his attack stat is through the roof. All in all, he's not a bad Pokemon, but he's definitely not the best fire type in the game, which sucks for me because he's my favorite Eeveelution. Hot take, I know. Pun entirely intended. He's C tier. Espeon, I'll just be honest, this is just Psychic type Jolteon. They have almost the exact same coverage moves and almost the exact same stats. Espeon is only useful for the Elite Four fights, specifically Marshall and Caitlyn. A lot of Team Plasma Grunts use poison types, so Espeon is perfect for beating them as well. It's only useful against two important trainers and is very physically frail, but it's still very useful against many route NPCs and will be a great help on your journey. I'm putting it in B. Don't mess beyond with my Espeon. Umbreon's kinda ass. I know he's a fan favorite, but I don't care, it needed to be said. He's not doing any damage with that base 65 attack stat. I'll admit I did use Umbreon in this game recently, but I shoved a bunch of attack EVs down his throat so he could do some actual damage. If you do that, he'll do fine. Good, but not great. It also gets Dig and Iron Tail, so those moves will make it more useful, I guess. It's the best Toxic Staller in the game, but you can't even do that until after you beat Drayden, which is the 7th gym leader. Besides, ain't nobody Toxic Stalling in a Nuzlocke. Unless you really want to try hard or you just run out of good encounters like a loser. Its speed is base 65, which is bad, but that just means Payback will most likely be 100 base power. Payback is usually 50 base power, but it doubles if the user moves after the target. He can take attacks for days, but can hardly dish them out. C tier. Oh, and in case you were wondering where Glaceon and Leafeon are, they're post-game, so cry harder. Now we got Crocodile, and I love Crook so much, bro. Besides ground and dark moves, it gets Brick Break, Rock Slide, and Iron Tail. It's useful for Elisa, Skyla, and every Elite Four member except Marshall. Now it will be stuck as Krokorok for a good while, which is bad because Krokorok is very frail, but when it finally evolves before the Skyla fight, oh baby, you'll be smooth sailing. Crocodile has decent bulk, great speed, and even greater attack. One of the best Pokemon for Nuzlocking this game without question. I'll only put him in A because Sandile and Krokorok are frail as fuck. Darmanitan is a great Pokemon and a great payoff for dealing with Darumaka's adorable yet terrible last for 20 levels. Darumaka is basically just a walking attack stat. Slow, frail, non-existent special attack, and that terrible ability, Guts. It makes every move you use have an extra 20% chance to miss. But after you beat Clay and finally evolve Darumaka, you get the best fire type in the game. He may still have low defenses, but every other stat is goated. Especially that base 140 attack, oh lord, and with sheer force it hits even harder. This guy can basically beat most Pokemon in the game with 2 or 3 hits. He's just that guy for real. Only helpful for Skyla, Grimsley, and Marshall, but like I said, he beats most Pokemon in like 2 or 3 hits. An easy A tier. I'd put him in S tier, but Darumaka is a total hassle to use. Next is Basculin. You can't catch one until after you beat Clay, sadly. You could have a moveset of Crunch, Agua Tail, Bounce, and Zen Headbutt though. It's only helpful for fighting every Elite Four member except Grimsley. This guy is basically semi-poor, but a fish. An inferior fish, if you will. It's fast, but it's frail. And if you catch one with the ability, Adaptability, then you'll be two-shotting a lot of Pokemon with Agua Tail. Especially if you give it a Mystic Water to hold. I beat this game with the Basculin on my team once. Its frail defenses really annoyed me, but he held his own, spammed Agua Tail, and did an alright job. He's going into C tier. Glad he got an evolution in Legends Arceus. Garbodor. You can catch Trubbish right before you fight Elisa. It doesn't evolve until after you beat Clay, but it can have a moveset of Gunk Shot, Payback, and Seed Bomb, and Toxic Spikes. I can only see this guy being useful for fighting Marlin and Chantal, but Stab Gunk Shot hits like a truck, so you could probably just spam that and be just fine, as long as your opponent doesn't resist any poison moves. If you're worried about Gunk Shot's 70% accuracy, you could give it a wide lens or a zoom lens to help out with that. He's definitely not going into D tier with those moves and those stats, so I'm putting him into C tier. You can get Minccino around the 4th gym, and after you beat the 5th gym, you can find a shiny stone and evolve it into Chinchino. If you ever get Minccino as a wild encounter, then just ignore it. Hear me out. As soon as you walk on the Route 5, Bianca comes out of nowhere and forces you to walk into a hidden grotto where you will find a static Skill Link Minccino just waiting to be caught. Some people might not say it doesn't count as a static, but it definitely counts in my opinion. It's an overworld encounter that's a part of a scripted cutscene you have to go through to beat the gate. It's a static. Cinccino is yet another frail Pokemon, but is very fast, has a decent attack stat, and an alright move. It gets Bullet Seed and Rock Blast, which thankfully hits 5 times every time thanks to Skill Link, and Tail Slap is basically Stab Return, but somehow even better. Silk Scarf boosted Stab Tail Slap has a base power of a whopping 225. That's almost the same base power as Explosion for crying out loud. And after you beat the 6th gym, you could teach it Iron Tail and Aqua Tail if you really wanted to. Cinccino is great for Scarlet and Marlin in terms of super effective moves, but Stab Tail Slap is so freaking strong with the Silk Scarf that I honestly wouldn't worry about using super effective moves that much. As long as your opponent is not a Rock, Steel, or Ghost type, it's probably going to get 2-shot by Tail Slap. I know I'm going to get shit for this, but I'm putting Cinccino in A tier. I know it's frail, but it's very fast and can hit like a dump truck. Now next up are the version exclusive birds of Gen 5. Braviary in White 2 and Mandibuzz in Black 2. Normally you wouldn't have access to these guys until after you get all the gym badges, but you can actually catch these guys on Route 4 as a static encounter if you go to the right spot on the right day of the week. And I'm not talking about their pre-evolved forms Rufflet and Vullaby, no. You can get these fuckers fully evolved before the 4th gym. I think they made this change in Black 2 White 2 because they didn't want these birds to be late game for the entire generation. These guys were also late game in Black 1 and White 1. It might also have something to do with Rufflet and Vullaby not evolving until level 54, dear god. But let's talk about Braviary. Braviary is the only normal flying type in this franchise that actually have a decent move pool, excluding my GOAT Togekiss. It's a normal type, so you already know Stab Return goes crazy, especially with that 123 base attack. It gets Fly alongside Rock Slide, Shadow Claw, and U-Turn. It's surprisingly not that helpful for fighting Clay because almost all his Pokemon are Rock Slide. It does have a super effective move for every Elite Four member, so that's cool. Fly for Marshall, U-Turn for Grimsley, and Shadow Claw for Caitlyn and Chantal. Fun fact, Stab Return actually does more damage than super effective U-Turn or Shadow Claw, even with the item boost. He's not that fast, but he has great bulk, so he can take a hit or two. I think B tier works just fine for it, but just so we're clear, in terms of fighting types, Braviary is better than Crobat in my opinion. Top 3 flying types in the game. Now to rank his edgy sister. This thing is very bulky but doesn't get toxic or roost until the 7th and 8th gym respectively, so you can't capitalize off those good defensive stats. I should have mentioned this earlier, but the static bird encounters you get on Route 4 always have their hidden ability. Braviary's hidden ability is Defiant, which is very good. Mandibuzz's hidden ability is Weak Armor, which is really bad for a defensive Pokemon like itself. This ability lowers the user's defense every time it's hit by a physical move. This sucks. Not to mention Mandibuzz's attack stat is really low. It's base 65, same as Umbreon. And to top it all off, its only good coverage move is U-Turn. If her moves aren't doing super effective damage, then they aren't doing any damage really. Still more useful than those pieces of garbage in F tier, so she can go in D with the grass types with no move pool. Next we got Sandslash. And oh god, I love Sandslash. I literally designed a shirt that has Sandslash on it. He's so cool, his moveset is so goated, D tier. He has a great attack and even greater defense, but his speed is low and his defense is even lower. Bro probably gets 2-shot by every strong special attacker in the game. His highlight is that he can probably no-sell at least his entire gym with the combo of Dig and Rock Tomb. It also gets X-Scissor, Brick Break, and Gyro Ball. Move-wise, it does great in the Elite Four, but do not take this thing into the Elite Four. He won't last against all those special attackers. Oh yeah, and he does well against Skyla, but so does every other ground type in the game, so big whoop. His design is still cool as hell though. Everybody loves to forget about Crustle, but not me though. I was actually hyped when he was in Pokemon's Unite 1 Day roster. I don't play this game anymore, but anyways, back to Black 2 White 2. An easy C tier. You can have him before Clay, and he's good against Skyla, Grimsley, Chantal, and Caitlyn thanks to his access to Rock Slide, X-Scissor, and Shadow Claw. He also gets Dig as well. Since Crustle does so good in the Elite Four, I would personally just wait until after you beat Marlin. We were just talking about Sandslash. Crustle is just Sandslash, but better in terms of stats. He's still slow, but he has decent special bulk. For a rock type anyway. I wish he was a better Mon. He deserves more. Scrafty is surprisingly useful. It's probably a big help for Skyla because stat payback will always be 100 base power, since almost all of her Pokemon outspeed Scraggy except for Flaffy. It's definitely helpful against Clay because most of his Pokemon are weak to fighting type moves, and lucky for Scrafty, he learns High Jump Kick right before this fight. His move pool is also surprisingly good. It has access to Dig, Rock Slide, Zen Headbutt, and the Elemental Punches. This makes him a great Pokemon for fighting Drayden, Marlin, Grimsley, Chantal, and Caitlyn. One important thing though, Stab High Jump Kick actually does much more than super effective Ice, Fire, or Thunder Punch. But High Jump Kick also has a 10% chance to miss, so I don't blame you if you want to use the punches. His speed stat may be low, but he has a decent attack stat, great bulk, and a great move pool, and is a big help against a lot of important trainers. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm putting him in S tier. He's just too useful. He's just too useful. Before I was doing my research, I thought he was just going to go in the B tier, but nah, he's him for real. Wow, we just placed in S tier, and now I gotta go all the way down into F tier for Maractus. I love her design, but she's just ass. I'm sorry, it's literally just superior, but worse. Well, actually, that's not entirely true because Maractus actually gets a few coverage moves, Sucker Punch and Bounce. Still very slow and frail though. Needs an evolution. El Bozo couldn't be me for real. Seriously though, why does this thing learn bounce? Like cactuses do not bounce. They stand in one spot forever. Next we have Sigilyph. It has great stats and a great move pool, but gets held by the important trainers they chose for this game. Type-wise, Sigilyph does well against Marlin thanks to its access to Energy Ball, and Marshall because, well, of course he does. You would think Sigilyph would be good against Caitlyn, seeing how we can learn Shadow Ball for her Psychic types, but most of said Psychic types have super effective moves for Sigilyph as well, so it's a bit risky. It does learn Icy Wind for Drayden, but Stab Psychic actually does more than super effective Icy Wind sadly. So Sigilyph actually only excels at fighting two important trainers thanks to how late it learns useful moves. It doesn't learn Energy Ball until after you beat Clay, and it doesn't learn Ice Beam for the Skyla and Drayden fights until after you beat the last gym leader. But hey, that doesn't mean Sigilyph is useless. It's still fast, hits hard, can set up screens, and can learn Thunder Wave for spreading status conditions. I'm putting it in B. I'm sorry Sigilyph, it's not your fault bro. I blame Game Freak. Now we got one of my Hoenn goats, Flygon. Bro, oh my god, I love Flygon so much that he's automatically going into S tier because he's so cool. Nah, I'm just kidding. But he is an S tier Pokemon Nuzlocke wise. He's good against Skyla, Clay, Elisa, Marlin, and the entire Elite Four. I don't recommend using this for the Drayden fight because Flygon's only Dragon type move at that point is Dragon Tail, a move that always goes last. Also, Dragon is weak to Dragon, so that's very risky. He also gets Rock Slide, Crunch, Fly, U-Turn, Thunder Punch, and a few more moves. His stats are great too. When you get your encounter in Desert Resort, you better pray to your god that your encounter is a trapping. I never really liked Cofagrigus all that much in terms of stats and move pool. His design goes kinda hard I guess. It starts out as a Yamask and isn't really all that useful until it evolves right before the Clay fight. Speaking of the Clay fight, it's actually somewhat useful. Cofagrigus has good special attack and amazing defense, which is good because all of Clay's Pokemon are physical attackers with low special defense. It does well against Marlin thanks to its access to Energy Ball, and does good against Marshall and Caitlyn thanks to Psychic and Shadow Ball. And Will-O-Wisp is a goated status move to use against any physical attacker. I'll put him in C tier. He's a very slow Pokemon, but he's also bulky, and a lot of Pokemon do its job of handling Ghost and Psychic types better, like Crocodile and Chandelure. Next we have Clang. As soon as you catch Clink, you can evolve it into Clang, and it's good against the upcoming gym battle with Skyla. The same goes for Marlin because Clang gets Discharge. It doesn't have any super effective moves against most of the Elite Four's Pokemon, but still resists Psychic, Ghost, and Dark in Gen 5, so you could probably just go to the Elite Four, send out Clinker, spam Metal Coat boosted Gear Grind, and probably just beat a bunch of Pokemon that way. It also gets Thunder Wave for spreading status conditions. I was ready to put this in F tier, but it's fast, surprisingly bulky, and the Steel type was busted before the Gen 6 nerf. It's actually going into C tier. It's too good to go down in D. Roserade is a grass type in this Pokedex that's actually good besides Leavanny. Since it's a grass type, of course it does well against Elisa, Clay, and Marlin. It resists all of Marshall's fighting type moves, so we can spam Giga Drain to high habits on his team. Roserade's only coverage move is Shadow Ball, which is great for Chantal's ghost types. But like I said earlier, most of those fuckers know Psychic, so be careful. Roserade has a high special defense, so it should be fine. Some good status moves it gets are Leech Seed, Toxic Spikes, Stun Spore, and Toxic. It's got low HP and defense, but it's got good speed and an amazing special attack stat. That sounds like B tier material to me. Now let's talk about the version exclusive Psychic types. We'll start with Gothitelle, only available in Black too. You can catch a Gothita right before the first gym, but it won't evolve until after you beat said gym. Gothitelle is only useful against Marlin thanks to Energy Ball, Marshall thanks to Psychic, and I guess Caitlyn thanks to Shadow Ball. Gothitelle has very good special bulk, so we can take out at least one or two of Caitlyn's Pokemon before you have to switch it out. It's very slow but has decent special attack stat and amazing bulk. It can set up screens and use Thunder Wave as well. I'll put it in the C tier. It's good but only shines against 3 important trainers. Also, there's better Psychic types in the game like Espeon and Sigilyph in my opinion. The White 2 version exclusive is Reuniclus. This one has grown on me over the years. In terms of beating important trainers, it's just as useful as Gothitelle, only beating Marlin, Marshall, and Caitlyn. But in terms of move pool, Reuniclus has the same move pool as Gothitelle, but better. Reuniclus has access to Thunder and some other goated TMs, but those are unfortunately post-game. And I would argue that Reuniclus spread is better than Gothitelle's too. It's still slow, but has an impressive 125 base special attack, while somehow being just as bulky as Gothitelle. I was talking about psychic types that were better than Gothitelle. This is a better psychic type than Gothitelle in my opinion. Yet another reason you should Nuzlocke a white 2 over black 2. First the static Braviary, and now this. I'm actually going to put Reuniclus in B tier because it can use Recover to capitalize off its great bulk. And it can just 2-hit KO a bunch of route trainers with Stab, Psychic, and Psyshock. Oh honey, it's time to talk about Vespiquen. Despite being a flying type and is clearly flying in the air, Vespiquen cannot learn Fly. Keep that in mind. What's interesting is that you could use Vespiquen as a physical attacker or a special attacker. Vespiquen only shines when battling Caitlyn and Grimsley. It doesn't do well against Marshall because most of his Pokemon have super effective moves against it. Vespiquen's only coverage move is Power Gem, and that move was only 70 base power back in Gen 5. This is definitely going into D tier. Slightly more useful than those F tier fucks though. And Emolga, I'm just gonna put this in F. Its stats are bad. I really hate battling this thing. I don't even want to talk about it. Even Zabstrika is a more useful electric type than this gliding goober. Next is probably my favorite Johto Pokemon, Heracross. He learned so many good moves: Dig, Rock Slide, Night Slash, Brick Break. He's useful for Elisa, Clay, Drayden, Grimsley, and that's not even all of them. He has great stats and is without question the best bug type in the game, and it's not even close. He's going all the way up in the S tier. Now we gotta talk about his bug typed brother, Pinsir. Pinsir is just Heracross, but without the fighting typing and a worse move pool. Pinsir is good against fighting Elisa, Clay, Grimsley, and Caitlyn. He has the same disgusting ass attack stat as Heracross and the same speed stat too. For coverage, he only gets Brick Break, Dig, and Rock Slide, which is pretty good. Overall, he's not as good as his bug type rival, Heracross, but he's definitely a really good encounter, so I'll put him in A tier. Zabstrika has been ass since day one. Its stat spread is ass despite having a base stat total of almost 500. It's frail and only gets 2 good attacking moves, Wild Charge and Bounce. I'm only going to put it in D, but that's because it's still very fast, has a decent attack stat, and can utilize Thunder Wave very well. Next is Floatzel. It's a very fast water type with decent attack but low defenses. As soon as you get your hands on one, you can teach Aqua Tail, Crunch, Ice Punch, and Brick Break. You can't catch one until after you beat Skyla, but it's still helpful for beating Drayden, Grimsley, Caitlyn, and Chantal. It's basically Semipour, but better. I'll put it in B tier. Next up is Zoroark. You're given a free Zoroark right before you fight Clay. It's fast and has a very respectable 120 base attack, but is very frail. Its best moves it'll have through the game are Dark Pulse, Bounce, and Dig, which is decent I guess. Only learning Flamethrower right before the Elite Four. It's got a good matchup against 2 important trainers, Caitlyn and Chantal. It's fast, hits hard, and can hit a lot of types for super effective damage, but is very frail and only really shines when battling a couple of late game trainers. That sounds like C tier to me. I'm about to get tired of mentioning frail Pokemon because now we gotta talk about Swanna. On the Driftvale drawbridge, you can encounter Ducklet and only Ducklet. You can evolve it right before the Clay fight, use Rain Dance, and one-shot his whole team except for his Onix with Bubble Beam. You can't one-shot the Onix because it has the ability Sturdy. It probably does the same thing to Drayden's team with Blizzard. Blizzard is Swanna's only coverage move, by the way. It also has the type advantage against Marlin, but most of his Pokemon know rock moves, so be careful. In terms of stats, it's not that good. This is yet another frail Pokemon, and it has a base 87 attack that it'll never use. At least it's fast and has an alright special attack. Feather Dance is a very useful status move that it gets though. I'm putting it into D tier. I know I put Zoroark in C tier, even though it has similar stats and similar problems, but when Zoroark hits, it hits hard, especially with Dark Pulse and Flamethrower. Meanwhile, neither one of Swanna's offensive stats reach base 90. So yeah, Gen 5 introduced quite a few bug steel type Pokemon, and Escavalier is definitely my favorite one of those bunch. As soon as you catch one, which is right before Clay, you can teach it Bug Bite and Iron Head. This is very helpful because Cavalier has a disgusting base 135 attack. Clay's Excadrill is his only Pokemon that resists Iron Head, so you can go into his fight and spam Iron Head on 1 to 2 of his Pokemon. It also does well against Skyla, Drayden, and the entire Elite Four. His only problems are his low speed and his lack of move pool, but Escavalier's bulk is so good that his low speed shouldn't be a problem. And X-Scissor and Iron Head are honestly the only 2 moves it needs. This is an easy S tier. Now for Escavalier's counterpart, Excelgor. I'm just gonna be honest, Excelgor isn't nearly as good as his rival. You can get Excelgor before Clay and suck most of his team dry with Mega Drain, and when it's time to fight Marlin, it'll have Giga Drain for even more suckage. I mean damage, I said damage. It makes quick work of Grimsley and Caitlyn too thanks to Stab Buck Buzz, but that's about all of his highlights. Excelgor has bad defenses, but a nice base 100 special attack stat, and a ridiculous base 145 speed. Seriously, why is bro so fast? Does he think he's Sonic or something? I'll put him in C tier because his defenses are bad and his only good coverage move is Giga Drain. Next we have Sauce Buck, and I'm tired of everybody sleeping on my Buck. He's actually not that bad. As soon as you gain access to it, it's a great asset for your team and is a big help against Clay's gym. And of course it's good against Marlin as well. And thanks to Jump Kick and Mega Horn, it's good against Caitlyn and Grimsley. Saucebuck's move pool actually isn't that bad either. Of course I gotta mention Stab Return. Stab Return goes crazy. It also gets Horn Leech, Jump Kick, Mega Horn, Bounce, and oddly enough Thunder Wave. It's got nice speed, nice attack. Its bulk isn't bad, but it's not great either. This is definitely going into B tier. His move pool is decent and his stats are good enough to help you beat the game. Among Us, I forget about Among Us sometimes. I've probably said this 5 times now, but as soon as you catch it, it's very helpful for the Clay fight. It's also useful for fighting Drayden, Marlin, and Marshall. Among Us has great bulk and an okay special attack stat, and by some miracle it gets Toxic and Synthesis at decent levels, so you could use Among Us's bulk to Toxic stall a bunch of Pokemon in the game. I recommend a moveset of Giga Drain, Venoshock, Toxic, and Synthesis. The Sludge Bomb TM is post-game, by the way. Lungus can go into C tier. He may not be fast, but he has great bulk, great status moves, and he always does his tasks. Castform is dog shit. F tier. Great move pool, but its stats are all bad. It's not even worth considering. This is only available on one route with a 5% encounter rate in Rustling Grass. You're not even gonna get this as an encounter, but it's still in the game, so I thought I should mention it. And how bad it is. Very bad. Sorry, MJTV, but your boy is washed. Rotom washed. Pass is up now, and he's kind of bad, but not that bad. He's a special attacking steel type that doesn't get flash cannon or a mirror shot for the whole journey. He of course does well against Skyla, and he does well against half of Drayden's team too, thanks to Probopass being a steel type. He resists a lot of moves used in the Elite Four as well, so you could probably go in there and spam Power Gem, Thunder, and Earth Power, and hope for the best. He's definitely going into D tier. There are better rock types and much better steel types. Speaking of better rock and or steel types, Aggron is exactly that. He actually gets good stat moves, being Iron Head and Rock Slide. It also gets a bunch of other good moves such as Dig, Payback, Brick Break, the Elemental Punches, Aqua Tail, and more. He'll be a big help for fighting Skyla, half of Drayden's team, Caitlyn, Grimsley, and Chantal. His speed and special defense may be low, but he has high attack and ridiculously high defense. I honestly think he's an A tier Pokemon. If you can play around his low special defense, and taking advantage of his high attack and large move pool is fun as hell. Claydol, the Claydol Pokemon, is next. Yes, in case you didn't know, Claydol's Pokemon category name is the Claydol Pokemon, and they named it Claydol. Real original. The thing with this Pokemon is that it's very bulky, but it can't hit very hard. Which is a shame because its move pool is surprisingly good. Earth Power, Psychic, Shadow Ball, Ice Beam, Signal Beam, ooh wee. If you put some good EVs and special attack stat, it becomes a decent mon. It's surprisingly only good for fighting 2 Elite Four members, Marshall and Caitlyn. Yeah, he doesn't really stack up well for fighting most of the important trainers in this game, but it still has decent stats and a great late game move pool, so there ain't no way he's going into D tier with those losers. He can sit in C tier. Volcarona. I've been waiting to talk about this bitch. Players who catch and use the static Volcarona in Relic Castle, aka Volcarona users, are cheater pumpkin eaters, or at least they would be, but Volcarona gets no good fire type moves via level up. No Flame Burst, no Heat Wave, no nothing. Certified bean eaters on God. Have fun spamming Fire Spin until you get the Fire Blast TM, which isn't until after you beat Skyla. Static Volcarona users just want to beat the Nuzlocke as safely as possible and flex on their homies after they win. Little do they know, if they still lose the Nuzlocke, then their friends will laugh at them, and if they win, then nobody cares. Volcarona is only good for fighting 3 important trainers anyways, all of which are in the Elite Four. Speaking of which, as much as I hate to admit it, Volcarona goes stupid in the Elite Four. It has Signal Beam for Grimsley and Caitlyn, Psychic for Marshall, and the best setup move in the game, Quiver Dance. Oh, and it has pretty great stats all around except for its defense. This Pokemon folds if it even looks at a rock type move the wrong way. I'll put it in A tier because it's a great Pokemon with great stats and a great move pool. It's still a bitch though. Can you tell that I don't like Volcarona? Galvantula. This is an easy A tier. It's useful for the Skyla fight, the Marlin fight, and half the Elite Four. It may be frail, but it's fast and has a nice special attack stat. It has Energy Ball and Giga Drain for coverage, and it has Screech and Thunder Wave for status moves. A tier might seem kinda high to some of you, but it's useful for too many important battles to put any lower. I genuinely can't decide whether I love or hate Ferrothor. I used it once in the past and it did a great job, but then I remembered how annoying this guy was in Smogon singles. Either way, this is an S tier Pokemon. As soon as you catch it, it's useful for the Skyla fight, half of Drady's team, Marlin, Caitlyn, and Chantal. Its stats are very good and it gets payback as its only good coverage move. It'll never outspeed the opponent, but that doesn't matter when it can sponge hits and dish him back out. Electros is up next, and if you know anything about him, you'll know that he's going in the S tier too. He's one of the only 3 Pokemon in this dex that's useful for every important trainer after you catch him. His move pool is mega good. He has one of the best abilities in the game, Levitate. His stats are great, and to top it all off, he has a great design. Thanks to Levitate, Electros has basically no weakness, so you can just spam Thunder Punch or whatever super effective move you have and win almost any 1v1 battle. I call Volcarona a Cheatermon. This is probably the biggest Cheatermon out of them all, but I actually like Electros, so it's okay. Jellicent used to be a Pokemon I would never consider using, but after doing my research, I'm actually really looking forward to my next chance to use this Pokemon. Whether that's in this game, the Ultra games, Sword or Shield, whatever. Jellicent's special attack stat is only 85, but it's got great bulk and access to recovery to outlast its opponents. It's also got some nice coverage moves too. Psychic, Ice Beam, and for some reason Energy Ball. Jellicent is a great Pokemon for fighting Drayden, Marlin, Caitlyn, and Marshall. I'm putting it into A tier. Bulky waters are love, bulky waters are life. Now we got Alomomola. This Pokemon is actually very bad when you gain access to it in this game. Like, very bad. It's a physical attacking water type with no strong physical water moves. Waterfall is very late game, and Dive is post game. But after you beat the 7th gym leader and gain access to the TM Toxic, you can run a moveset of Toxic, Protect, and Wish, which is super scummy. It works, but it's still scummy. You must really want to win this Nuzlocke if you're going to run Toxic Protect Alomomola. Sadly, this is the only way to use Alomomola in a Nuzlocke. It gets great special moves like Psychic and Shadow Ball, but its special attack stat is 40. 40! Yeah, no amount of special investment is going to make that stat useful. Now in competitive singles on the other hand, Mola is very good. It's actually in Gen 9 OU right now as I'm making this 30+ page script, but in terms of Nuzlocking, it's kinda mid. It's only going into D tier because, as scummy as that Toxic Protect Wish set is, it really works. Just chip away at their health with Toxic while healing yourself with Wish, and then kill them with max power return before they pop a full restore. It does wonders during the Elite Four. Bulky waters are love, bulky waters are life. But not this one. My guy Haxorus is up next. Now remember when I said Electros is one of the only 3 Pokemon great for battling every important trainer after you catch it? Well, this is another one of those 3, provided that you live 1 Dragon Tail from Drayden's Strutigan. The move is only 60 base power, so Haxorus most likely lives. But yeah, 2 words, Dragon Dance. Even as a Fracture, you can sweep Skyla's team with just Dragon Dance and Rock Tomb. It has X-Scissor for Caitlyn and Grimsley, Brick Break for Marshall, Shadow Claw for Chantal, and everybody else just gets their fade ran by Stab, Dragon Claw. No Unova Pokemon has levels of Crash Out energy quite like Haxorus. Darmanitan comes close though. This is without a doubt going in the S tier. And we're going from one goated Pokemon to another. Now Zangoose is frail, very frail, but if you can play around that, Zangoose is without a doubt an A tier Pokemon. When you gain access to it after the 5th gym, it's helpful for every important trainer battle after that except for Marshall. And that's thanks to moves like Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, X-Scissor, Shadow Claw, and more. His 90 base speed is pretty good, and his 115 base attack is nothing to scoff at either. I promise he'll do a good job, but please be careful. He does not take fighting type moves well. Now we're going over his eternal rival, Seviper. Seviper is not useful for fighting a single important trainer after you catch it. Not to mention its stat distribution is horrible. Base 100 attack and special attack is good, but not a single one of its other stats reach 80. So Seviper is getting outsped and being defeated by maybe 3 or even 2 attacks from a lot of fully evolved Pokemon. Which is a shame because just like Zangoose, Seviper has a surprisingly good move pool. I hate to do it, but I have to put it in F. If it can't help you beat any gym leader or any Elite Four member, then it's essentially worthless. Okay, I think every Pokemon I'll cover from this point onward is only available after the 6th gym, so you won't have to worry about me mentioning the 6th gym or Skyla again for this video. But next is Beheeyem. This is just Gothitelle, but less focus on bulk and more focus on offense. It's only useful for fighting Marlin, Marshall, and to be Caitlyn because of the whole Shadow Ball thing. Behemoth's move pool is almost the exact same as Gothitell's as well. I'm just gonna put it in C tier too. Chandelure is a Pokemon with decent bulk and a disgusting, ridiculous, tremendous base 145 special attack. It unfortunately has a type disadvantage against the last two gyms and can only shine in the Elite Four, specifically Marshall and Caitlyn. And even then, it's not that useful in the Elite Four fight either. But it's still great for taking care of route trainers though. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm putting it in C tier. It's barely any help for fighting important trainers, which is, the most important thing. Beartic is another one of my Unova favorites. Also, I lied. This is the last Pokemon you can get before Skyla. It's actually helpful for fighting every important trainer after Clay except for Marshall. It's even kinda helpful for fighting Marlin because Beartic can use Shadow Claw on Jellicent and Rock Slide on Mantine. Beartic's move pool is actually very good, by the way. It gets Brick Break and Dig too. He might be slow, but he has great bulk and a nice 110 attack stat. Great stats, great move pool, very useful for important fights. You know what that sounds like? Sounds like an S tier. Oh, and now I get to talk about Drapion next. I don't think I've ever used a Drapion, like, ever. But now I'm looking forward to it the next time I play this game. He gets Ice Fang for Drayden, Thunder Fang for Marlin, Crunch for Caitlyn and Chantal, and Brick Break for Grimsley. His stats are great too. He has nice speed, great bulk, and a decent attack stat. When you add in the fact that he only has like one weakness, Drapion is definitely going in the S tier as well. Skarmory might not be that fast or a good special bulk, but its defense is ridiculously high. Its attack stat is only base 80, but it does get Swords Dance, and right before the last gym leader, you can teach it Roost for health recovery. Its other useful moves are Rock Slide, Egg Scissor, Iron Head, and Fly. It's great for fighting Drayden, Marshall, Caitlyn, and Grimsley. I'm only putting it in A tier because half of its stats are still kinda bad despite how useful it is. They made Camerupt and Grumpig version exclusives in this game for some reason, and the White 2 version exclusive Mon is Camerupt. His bulk isn't entirely bad, but it's not great either. But in exchange, it has good attack and good special attack. Its speed stat is terrible though, only base 40. It's not really useful for any important trainer, and it only has one useful coverage move, that being Rock Slide. I can't put this any higher than D tier, but it stays out of F because it can be very useful against fighting route trainers. Grumpig, the Black 2 exclusive, is up next. Unlike Camerupt, Grumpig actually is useful for your Nuzlocke. It gets Energy Ball for Marlin, Psychic for Marshall, and Shadow Ball for Caitlyn. Grumpig's only bad stat is defense, which is a mere 65, and I guess its speed stat is a little lacking too, but it should be fine. Other useful moves it gets are Signal Beam and Power Gem. I think Grumpig belongs in B tier. It may be physically frail, but its move pool is great and will have a lot of chances to shine. Drifloon is a very weird case. Low defenses but very high HP. It's a special attacking fly type, yet it doesn't give Air Slash or Hurricane. Luckily it gets Stab Acrobatics, which should be good enough. Drifloon can be very useful for fighting Marlin because it can learn Thunder, but all of Marlin's Pokemon also have super effective moves for Drifloon too, so battle at your own risk. Acrobatics probably goes crazy on Marshall's team, and Stab Shadow Ball is definitely somewhat useful for fighting Caitlyn too. It can go into C tier. Bruh. Bayonet to this day has been one of the saddest ghost types in history. It has a base 83 special attack that you should never use, and every other stat besides attack doesn't even reach 70. Not only that, its move pool is trash. It gets Shadow Claw, Sucker Punch, that's it. As Sucker Punch is only super effective on Ghost and Dark types, just like Shadow Claw. This is so disappointing, man. Bayonet has a great design and great Pokedex entries too that go hard, but it's just so useless most of the time. The only good buff it got is access to Gunk Shot in Gen 7, which was helpful, but not that helpful. I really hate to do this, but I'm putting my boy Bayonet in F tier. Sorry buddy, at least you got that mid-mega evolution in the Hoenn remakes. Pelipper has low speed, low health, and low special attack. It's just begging to be one-shot by Thunder or Discharge. Pelipper does have good attack and good defense though. Pelipper is only useful for fighting one important trainer, which is Drayden. Have fun spamming Surf and Ice Beam because Pelipper does not get a special attacking flying type move, Hurricane, until level 63. This might be very useful in Hoenn, but here in Unova, it's very mediocre. D tier. Now we got Lunatone, a special attacking rock type that doesn't learn Power Gem or Agent Power. You're forced to use Rock Slide or Stone Edge off that base 55 attack stat. Its only good stats are special attack and special defense. Everything else is mid or worse. Caitlyn is the only trainer that Lunatone does well against. This is going in D tier. And Solrock is going there too, and there's nothing you can do about it. Good lord, how many Hoenn Pokemon am I going to talk about in a row? Absol is a Pokemon with mediocre speed, a monstrous base 130 attack, but very frail both physically and especially. Although his move pool is great, he is only really useful when fighting Chantal and Caitlyn. Definitely not a C tier Mon. He's going down in D. Tired of all the mediocre Pokemon I've been mentioning? Well, here's a Pokemon that's actually somewhat useful. Tangrowth is useful for fighting Marlin, Chantal, and Caitlyn. You will want to put some special defense investment into it though, because its special defense is only base 50. Tangrowth's speed is bad too, but literally every other stat is base 100 or higher. Some coverage moves it gets are Brick Break, Payback, and Rock Slide. It fits just fine in C tier. Mian Shao is one of the best sweepers in the game, especially with the Life Orb item, but I try to stay away from busted ass items like Choice Band, Focus Sash, Life Orb, etc. in my Nuzlocke. Thanks to its high speed and attack, Mian Shao can probably just use Swords Dance turn 1 and one-shot Drayden's whole team with Dual Chop. It's great for fighting Marlin, Grimsley, and Marshall as well. It may be frail, but it's fast, hits very hard. It can hit a lot of types super effectively. Life Score is useful for fighting every important trainer from Drayden onwards except for Marlin. Its only bad stat is its special attack stat, but it's never even using that anyway. It's a physical attacker. This is a definite S tier. I wish it could learn Fly. Now B Sharp is only useful in the Elite Four, but in the Elite Four it's very good. It's good for every one of the Elite Four members except for Marshall. It has mid special defense and speed, but great defense and even greater attack. I think it belongs in B tier. Next is a bunch of water types. I wonder how many times I'll say good against Drayden because every water type can learn Blizzard. You know what? Every water type I'm about to mention is good against Drayden. How about that? Okay? Now let's start with Mantine. Mantine has great bulk, but its special attack stat is only base 80. In terms of super effective moves, it gets Air Slash for Marshall and Signal Beam for Grimsley and Caitlyn. I'm actually going to put Mantine in A tier. It has just the moves and stats to be helpful in a lot of battles. And since Mantine is in the game, of course they added Octillery too. Octillery stats are actually decent for a Nuzlocke. It's another one of those Pokemon that only really have one bad stat, which is speed. An Octillery can be a special or physical attacker. This is also the last one of the 3 Pokemon that's useful for every important gym battle from the moment you catch it. And that's because its move pool is crazy. Psychic, Payback, Signal Beam, Flamethrower, etc. Octillery's got it made. This is an easy S tier. Corsola. Man, I love Corsola so much, but it's just so bad. It'll hardly do anything with that base 65 special attack stat. It's kind of bulky, I guess. The only saving graces it has going for it is Recover, Shadow Ball, and Earth Power. Most Pokemon in the Elite Four have super effective moves on this thing, so don't even bother taking it up there. I hate to do it, but I gotta put it in F. Still has one of the best designs out of Gen 2. Adorable as fuck. Changed my mind. Remember when I said Vaporeon was the 3rd best water type encounter? Well, this is the number 1 best water type encounter. Decent bulk, decent special attack stat, and is very fast. Its move pool is very good, and the only trainers it struggles against are Grimsley and Chantal. And it can also heal with Recover and spread status with Thunder Wave. S tier without question. Wailord, Wailord. Wailord is only useful for 2 battles. Drayden because duh, and Marshall because it gets in Headbutt. This is without a doubt one of the worst water types in Nuzlocke wise. Every other water type in the game can spam Surf and Blizzard and get better results except for Corsola and Pelipper. Most of those guys can't learn Zen Headbutt like Wailord can, but like bruh, who cares? There's a bunch of Pokemon that can learn the Psychic TM, you'll be fine. Still not completely useless though, so I'll shove it in D tier. Next is Lapras, and this is the 2nd best water type. So here's the top 3 in case you forgot. Also, I don't know if I want to include this line in the video or not, but I completely forgot about Azumarill because I talked about it so way earlier. But Azumarill is very good, obviously. Lapras is super bulky and can do a bit of damage back with its base 85 special attack stat. It can learn a bunch of useful moves too, making it useful for every trainer battle except for Chantal and Marshall. And when your opponent only has 1 Pokemon left, Lapras can guarantee the victory by using Perish Song. My only regret is that it doesn't learn Recover. You would think at this point in the franchise they would have made a water type variant of Recover or Soft Boiled, but no. I know we have Aqua Rig and Life Dew, but those moves suck. So yeah, Lapras is a guaranteed S tier. Bulky waters are love, bulky waters are life. Walrein is just Lapras with a worse move pool if I'm being honest. Your Walrein set is going to be Surf, Blizzard, and Signal Beam, right? Lapras gets all of those moves and more. And Lapras was the one that was made first. Shaking my head on God. Walrein still great for fighting Caitlyn and Grimsley thanks to Signal Beam though. I'll put him in B. Okay, we're finally done with all those water types. Thank God. This must be how every Sceptile feels after they finally beat Wallace and Ruby and Sapphire. Let's talk about Altaria. Altaria has great bulk but mid speed and even more mid attack. But that's just fine because Altaria can dance on her opponents with the move Dragon Dance. Her best moves are Fly, Bulldoze, and Iron Tail. Unfortunately, she isn't going to be much help for any of the remaining battles except for Marshall. I love her, but she's going down in D tier sadly. I almost left this one out, but you can actually get Ninetales right before the Elite Four. Once you get the AM Waterfall, you'll gain access to a location called the Abundant Shrine where you can get Vulpix. Ninetales is actually very useful for the Elite Four. It gets Side Shock for Marshall and can learn Dark Pulse for Caitlyn and Chantal. This guy is almost completely useless for the champion fight though. Almost all of Iris's Pokemon have a super effective move on Ninetales. Maybe if you're lucky you can two-shot her Lapras with Energy Ball if her Hydro Pump misses, I don't know. Have fun with that. I'll give Ninetales the B tier. Bronzong was also made available thanks to the Abundant Shrine, and is also even more useful than Ninetales, sorry. Stabs and Headbutt is great for Marshall, and Payback is great for Chantal and Caitlyn. And since Bronzong's speed stat is somehow base 33, it'll most likely be moving last during the battle, so Payback will be 100 base power. Add in the fact that the Steel Psychic type combination was incredible back in Gen 5, and this is an easy A tier. Next is another one of my Sinnoh goats, Weavile. Even when there's no gym leaders left, my goat Weavile can cook a fine ass meal. Weavile's got 120 base attack, 125 base speed, and Swords Dance, so you know what that means. With Swords Dance and Brick Break, Grimsley is getting swept and no problem. Chantal's getting cooked by Swords Dance and Night Slash, easy peasy. I'd say the same for Caitlyn, but she's got that Gen 5 Metagross over there, so someone else in the party will have to deal with that metal fucker. Oh, and don't even look at Marshall with Weavile. I swear, I've hated Marshall since I was 11. Why are your lips blue? What have you been eating, cuzzo? And as for Iris, Weavile busses up her team too. Half her team is made up of dragons after all. Yeah, Weavile's got bad defense, but all it really needs is one turn to use Swords Dance and fuck up the opponent's entire team. Weavile's been goated since Gen 4, and it still is to this very day. I can always count on my goat. All he's ever done is get results. I don't even care if he's late game and loses to Marshall. He's going into S tier where he belongs. Delibird. Do I really need to explain this one? Not a single one of his stats reaches 80. Get down there in F tier where you belong, you little waste of space. Oh god, finally, we're back to talking about good ice types. Just so we're clear, every Pokemon I rank at this point is only available after you beat all the gyms, including Vanillux, which actually does a decent job. It somehow has a base stat total of 535, which is really good. It gets Signal Beam for Grimsley and Caitlyn, and Stab Ice Beam, which is great for Iris' team. Out of the 5 major battles left in the game, it's very helpful for 3 of them, so I'll put it in B tier. Now we got everybody's favorite Mammoth, Mamoswine. He's definitely great for the champion fight, and all the Elite Four members have at least one Pokemon weak to Ice or Ground, which is great for Mamo, so potentially he's good in every major battle. His strongest physical Ice-type move is Ice Fang sadly, but Mamo's attack stat is base 130, so it should be fine. It might be a bit hard to swap him in safely when it's his turn to fight, thanks to his large amount of weaknesses and low special defense, so I'll only put him in B. Ditto is trash, F tier. You have to waste an entire turn using Transform to actually gain a moveset. Now some of you may be thinking, but Jay, doesn't Ditto get that one sussy ability, Imposter? Well actually yes, you can get Imposter Ditto in your Pokemon Nuzlocke. If you enter Giant Chasm's Hidden Grotto and there's a Pokemon in there, there is a 1% chance it will be Ditto with its hidden ability. 1%. If you actually hit that shit, then good for you. If I ever get Ditto as an encounter in any game, I'm acting like I never saw it and I'm trying again for a new encounter on the same route. I am serious. This little purple fucker can go in F tier, right where he belongs. I don't know why one of the Hoenn pseudo-legendaries was thrown in this game at the very end, but you won't see me complaining, is what you'd think I'd say. But Caitlyn's Metagross is actually very annoying, like why are you in my Gen 5 game, bitch? When you think about it, Metagross doesn't belong because it's like it's supposed to be in Hoenn, and Caitlyn also doesn't belong because she's actually a Gen 4 character if you didn't know. So that whole thing is just screwy. There's actually too many Hoenn Pokemon in this game in general, but back to Gross McGrocerson over here. I think we all know where this Clanker is going. Without doing any research, I can tell you he takes a big fat dookie on Marshall's team, has a Hammer Arm for Grimsley's team, and Shadow Ball for Caitlyn and Chantal. You can watch them all fall and then stand tall. Metagross has never been small, and he's the one to call whenever you want to enter the Hall of Fame. Oh yeah, and he goes stupid on Iris' whole team with Ice Punch, Hammer Arm, and Meteor Mash. He's an S tier. Damn, I just realized this is the 4th Pokemon that's useful for every important trainer battle after you catch it. Oh well. Okay, this is the last water type on this list, Dugong. Remember when I said Walrein was just an inferior Lapras? Well, Dugong is just an inferior form of Lapras and Walrein. Oh, seriously, how did Lapras and Dugong come from the same generation when one of these water ice types is leagues better than the other? Anyway, Dugong gets ice moves for Iris and Signal Beam for Grimsley and Caitlyn. Stop me if you've heard this before. Dugong's special attack stat is only 70, so it will need some investment if you're actually going to challenge the league with it. If Walrein was B tier, then Dugong is going into C. You deserved better. No Mega Evolution, no added evolutions in later games. Damn, couldn't be me for real. Next we have the Mario and Luigi of the fighting types in this game. Throw and Sawk. Throw is very slow but very bulky Pokemon that will be helpful for fighting Iris and Grimsley, and Chantal too thanks to Throw learning the move Payback. His move pool is very big as well. He's going into B tier. Now I surprisingly cannot say the same for Sawk, because Sawk actually has a speed stat and can't utilize Payback as well as his Italian brother. So Sawk isn't nearly as useful for when fighting Chantal. I'm gonna have to put him in the C tier. Also, what's up with the Karate Dojo uniforms these guys are wearing? You think they're wearing actual clothes or is that their skin? Buffalon is up next, and remember how I said Stab Return goes crazy? Well, for Buffalon, Stab Head Charge goes crazy instead. This is a 120 base power move that does slight recoil damage to the user. With Stab, it becomes 180 base power, and with the Silk Scarf item, it goes all the way up to 216. And when you take into account that Buffalon's attack stat is base 110, well, you can probably 2-hit KO Pokemon that resist this attack. Ignoring Marshall because he's a bitch, Buffalon gets Payback for Chantal and Caitlyn, and he also gets Mega Horn for Grimsley. And of course, it's useful for fighting Iris too. He can head charge his way into the A tier spot. And our final Pokemon of discussion for today is Golurk. I love Golurk so much. His design goes hard. He can turn into a literal rocket. Can your favorite ghost type turn into a rocket? Didn't think so. Anyway, I actually wouldn't recommend taking Golurk into the Pokemon League. It's very useful for the champion to fight, yes. But Lurk actually doesn't match up against Caitlyn's psychic types that well because most of them outspeed and can hit him for super effective damage. He can learn Fly for Marshall's team. Yes, Golurk can learn Fly, I'm not joking. But most of those guys can hit him for super effective damage too. And don't even get me started on Grimsley and Chantal. Golurk, I love you buddy, but you're actually going into D tier. You're only useful for one fight. Okay, thank fucking God I'm finally done. This video took over a week to script out. If I missed any Pokemon in Black 2, White 2's decks, then it's either A, post-game, B, irrelevant, not worth mentioning in the video, or C, a legendary. We don't use legendaries in Nuzlocke around here. If you actually watched this entire video, then thank you so much for watching and please leave a like. It'd mean the world to me. If you want to see me make a tier list like this again for Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, or Sinnoh, let me know in the comment section and I'll get to work on it. But to be specific, if I do a tier list for Sinnoh, it will be based on Platinum because you got me effed up if you think I'm playing Diamond or Pearl. I'm never touching those games. I'm definitely not doing this for Gen 6, 7, 8, or 9 because they have way too many Pokemon in their regional decks. Black 2, White 2's decks only has 300 Pokemon, and this took me forever. I'm pretty sure every Pokedex after Black 2, White 2 has at least 400 Pokemon in there. So yeah, I'm not dealing with that shit. I hope you have a great rest of your day. This is Jay signing off. Don't forget to eat your vegetables.